Jeff Bezos, the man who turned a small online bookstore into the global giant Amazon. Didn't start with silver spoon or an easy path. His early life was a mix of challenges, hard work, and moments that sparked his curiosity and ambition. Born in 1964 in Albuquerque, New Mexico, Jeffrey Preston Jorgensen came into the world under tough circumstances. His mother, Jacqueline Guys, was just 17 years old, a high school student with big dreams but little money. His father, Ted Jorgensen, was 19, a talented unicyclist who performed at local fairs but struggled to hold a steady job. Ted's love for the spotlight didn't translate into stability, and his battles with alcohol strained the young couple's marriage. By the time Jeff was 17 months old, Jacqueline and Ted had separated, leaving Jacqueline to raise her son alone. She moved back in with her parents in Albuquerque, filing for divorce in June 1965. Those early years were tough, but Jacqueline's determination to keep going left a mark on Jeff, showing him what it meant to push through hard times. Life took a turn when Jacqueline met Miguel Mike Bezos, a Cuban immigrant who had arrived in the United States at 15, fleeing political upheaval in his home country. Mike was a hard worker, learning English from scratch and earning a degree in petroleum engineering from the University of New Mexico. By the time he met Jacqueline, he was working for Exxon in Albuquerque, building a stable career. In April 1968, when Jeff was 4, Jacqueline and Mike married, and Mike adopted Jeff, giving him the last name Bezos. The adoption was more than a legal change. It gave Jeff a father figure who would shape his view of the world. Mike's journey from a teenage immigrant to a successful engineer showed Jeff the power of grit and hard work. The family moved to Houston, Texas, where Mike's job with Exxon took them, settling into a middle-class life that gave Jeff a stable home. In Houston, Jeff's curiosity started to shine. He was the kind of kid who loved figuring out how things worked. At 2.5, he grabbed a screwdriver and tried to take apart his crib, convinced he was too old to sleep in it. His mom, amused but firm, let him tinker under supervision, a sign of the hands-on spirit that would define him. Jeff's early years were filled with small inventions, like rigging an electric alarm to keep his younger siblings, Christina and Mark, out of his room. These projects weren't just kid stuff. They showed a mind that loved solving problems and building things from scratch. His parents encouraged this, giving him space to experiment while teaching him the value of discipline. Summers were a highlight for Jeff, spent at his grandparents' 25,000-acre ranch in Cotulla, Texas. His grandfather, Lawrence Preston Guys, or Pop, as Jeff called him, was a big influence. Pop had worked for the Atomic Energy Commission, helping oversee nuclear projects, before retiring to the ranch. He was a practical man, skilled at fixing machinery and managing the land. Jeff followed him around, learning how to repair windmills, vaccinate cattle, and lay pipes. These tasks weren't glamorous, but they taught Jeff how to think on his feet and tackle real-world problems. Pop also shared his love for science, talking about space exploration and technology while they worked under the Texas sun. Those long days on the ranch gave Jeff a sense of independence and a belief that he could figure anything out if he tried hard enough. When Jeff was a teenager, the family moved again, this time to Miami, Florida, for Mike's job. Miami was a new world, with its sunny beaches and diverse culture, and Jeff thrived there. He enrolled at Miami Palmetto High School, where he quickly stood out. He wasn't just book smart. He was driven, always looking for ways to challenge himself. To earn money, he worked the breakfast shift at McDonald's, flipping burgers and cracking eggs before school. The job was fast-paced, teaching him how to stay calm under pressure and deal with all kinds of customers. He later said the experience showed him the importance of teamwork and efficiency, lessons he'd carry into his business life. School was where Jeff really shone. He dove into science and math, joining the Student Science Training Program at the University of Florida, where he spent a summer working on research projects. The program was intense, but Jeff loved it, soaking up knowledge about physics and computers. By his senior year, he was named valedictorian, the top student in his class. He also won a Silver Knight Award, a prestigious honor for Miami students, and was named a National Merit Scholar, putting him among the best high schoolers in the country. In his valedictorian speech, Jeff shared a dream that went beyond the classroom. Inspired by Star Trek and the idea of exploring new frontiers, He talked about colonizing space to save Earth's resources. He imagined turning the planet into a giant national park, with humans living in space stations. It was a bold vision for an 18-year-old, but it showed how Jeff thought big, even then. After graduating in 1982, Jeff headed to Princeton University, one of the top schools in the country. He started as an English major, thinking he might become a writer, but soon switched to electrical engineering and computer science. The 1980s were an exciting time for computers, with personal PCs like the IBM and Apple II starting to change the world. Jeff saw the potential early on, diving into programming and software projects. He wasn't just studying. He was obsessed with understanding how computers could solve problems. At Princeton, he joined Phi Beta Kappa, a society for top students, and graduated in 1986 with Bachelor of Science in Engineering, earning summa cum laude honors, the highest academic distinction. Princeton wasn't just about books for Jeff. He was a leader, serving as president of the Students for the Exploration and Development of Space, a club that matched his love for sci-fi and space travel. He looked up to inventors like Thomas Edison, who built practical solutions, and Walt Disney, who created whole worlds from his imagination. These role models inspired Jeff to think about building something new, something that could change lives. He wasn't sure what that would be yet, but the seeds were planted. Jeff's early life wasn't perfect, but it was rich with experiences that shaped him. His mom's strength as a young single mother showed him resilience. His stepdad's journey from Cuba to corporate America taught him the value of hard work. The summers on the ranch gave him practical skills and a love for problem solving. And his time at school, from Miami to Princeton, honed his mind and fueled his ambition. By the time he left college, Jeff wasn't just a smart kid with a degree. He was a dreamer with a knack for turning ideas into reality. He didn't know it yet, but those early years were building the foundation for Amazon, Blue Origin, and a life that would change the world. Jeff Bezos' journey from a curious kid to a world-changing entrepreneur took a big leap in the years after college, when he dove into the fast-paced world of finance and then risked everything to start Amazon. Fresh out of Princeton in 1986, with a degree in electrical engineering and computer science, Jeff was ready to make his mark. He wasn't dreaming of online shopping yet, but his early career set the stage for the bold move that would change his life and the world. Those years were a whirlwind of learning, risk-taking, and a growing belief that the internet could be the future of business. By 1995, Jeff had left a cushy job, moved across the country, and launched a company in his garage that would become a global giant. This is the story of how he got there. At 22, Jeff stepped into the bustling world of New York City, a far cry from the quiet ranch in Texas where he spent his childhood summers. His first job was at Fattel, a startup focused on telecommunications and international finance. The company was small but ambitious, building software to help banks trade stocks across borders. Jeff worked as a programmer, learning how to write code under pressure and manage complex systems. The job wasn't glamorous, long hours, tight deadlines, and a steep learning curve, but it taught him how to think fast and solve problems in a high-stakes environment. He stayed for 2 years, soaking up knowledge about technology and business, but he felt the company wasn't moving fast enough to match his energy. In 1988, he jumped to Bankers Trust, a bigger player in finance, where he worked on software for managing pension funds. At just 24, he became one of the youngest vice presidents there, a sign of his knack for standing out. But even then, Jeff wasn't content to stay in one place. He wanted something bigger, something that would let him build, not just manage. In 1990, Jeff joined D. Shaw and Company, a hedge fund known for using cutting-edge math and computers to make money in the stock market. This was the early days of quant trading, where brainy programmers like Jeff used algorithms to spot tiny opportunities in the market. D. Shaw was a perfect fit for Jeff's love of numbers and technology. He climbed the ranks fast, becoming the youngest senior vice president in the company's history by 1992. At age 28, his boss, David Shaw, saw him as a star, smart, driven, and full of ideas. Jeff's job wasn't just about coding. He was tasked with finding new ways to make money, like exploring how the firm could use the internet, which was just starting to catch on. That's when Jeff's path took a turn. In 1994, While researching online opportunities, he stumbled across a statistic that stopped him in his tracks. The internet was growing by 2,300% a year. Most people barely knew what the internet was, but Jeff saw it as a wave he could ride to something huge. The idea that stuck with Jeff wasn't flashy. It was books. He figured books were the perfect product to sell online. There were millions of titles, far more than any store could stock, and they were easy to ship. Plus, people didn't need to try on a book like they would a shirt, so buying online made sense. Jeff made a list of 20 possible products, from clothes to electronics, but books kept coming out on top. He pitched the idea to David Shaw, suggesting the hedge fund start an online bookstore. Shaw wasn't sold. Hedge funds were about trading stocks, not selling books. But Jeff couldn't let it go. He spent nights and weekends digging into the idea, calculating costs and imagining how an online store could work. The more he thought about it, the more he realized this wasn't just a side project. It was his chance to build something from scratch. Leaving D. Shaw wasn't easy. Jeff was making good money, with a corner office and a bright future on Wall Street. He was also newly married to Mackenzie Scott, a Princeton grad, an aspiring writer he'd met at the firm in 1992. They married in 1993, and Mackenzie supported his dreams, even if they seemed risky. Jeff later said he used a regret minimization framework to make the decision. He imagined himself at 80, looking back, and asked if he'd regret not trying to start his own company. The answer was clear. He had to go for it. In the spring of 1994, at 30 years old, Jeff quit his job, packed up his life, and told Mackenzie they were moving to Seattle. Why Seattle? It was close to tech talent and a major book distributor, Ingram, which would make shipping easier. Plus, Washington State had lower taxes than New York. It was a practical choice for a big gamble. In Seattle, Jeff and Mackenzie rented a modest house in Bellevue, a suburb with a growing tech scene. The garage became their office, with a couple of desks, some computers, and a dream. Jeff started Amazon in July 1994, naming it after the Amazon River to suggest something vast and unstoppable. He didn't have much, just $10,000 of his own money and $250,000 from his parents, who believed in him even if they didn't fully understand the internet. Jeff's mom, Jacqueline, and stepdad, Mike, became early investors, not knowing if they'd ever see their money again. Jeff warned them there was a 70% chance they'd lose it all, but they trusted his vision. He hired a small team, including Shel Caffin, a programmer who helped build a website, and they got to work. Building Amazon wasn't easy. The internet in 1994 was clunky, with dial-up modems and slow browsers like Netscape. Jeff and his team had to create a website that was simple enough for regular people to use, but powerful enough to handle orders. They worked long hours, coding and testing, often sleeping on couches in the garage. Jeff wasn't just a boss. He was hands-on, writing code, packing boxes, and answering customer emails. In July 1995, after a year of hard work, Amazon sold its first book, Fluid Concepts and Creative Analogies by Douglas Hofstadter. It was a small victory, but it proved the idea could work. Customers started trickling in, mostly tech-savvy early adopters who heard about Amazon through word of mouth. The early days were chaotic, but exciting. Amazon's office was a mess, with extension cords dangling and desks made from cheap doors bought at Home Depot. Jeff kept costs low, using every dollar to improve the website. One of his big ideas was customer reviews, letting buyers share their opinions on books. It was a risky move. Some publishers worried bad reviews would hurt sales, but Jeff believed it would build trust. He was right. Customers loved being able to read what others thought, and it set Amazon apart from traditional bookstores. Another innovation was one-click ordering, a simple button that let people buy with a single tap. It sounds basic now, but in the 1990s it was revolutionary, making shopping faster and easier. By 1996, Amazon was growing fast, selling books across the U.S. and even overseas. Jeff raised $8 million from investors like Kleiner Perkins, a venture capital firm, to keep the company going. But growth brought challenges. Big bookstores like Barnes and Noble launched their own websites, and Amazon was losing money, spending more on servers and warehouses than it earned. Jeff didn't care about profits yet. He cared about customers. He wrote in his first shareholder letter in 1997 that Amazon was focused on the long term, not quick wins. He called it Day One, a mindset of staying hungry and acting like a startup no matter how big the company got. That letter became a manifesto, outlining his belief in putting customers first, taking risks, and building a company that would last. Jeff's leadership style was intense but inspiring. He didn't use PowerPoint presentations. Instead, he asked employees to write 6-page memos explaining their ideas in detail. It forced everyone to think clearly and argue their case. He also set high standards, sometimes pushing his team to the limit. Some found it tough, but others thrived, drawn to Jeff's vision of changing how people shop. By 1998, Amazon wasn't just selling books anymore. It added CDs, DVDs, and toys, aiming to be the everything store. Jeff's marriage to Mackenzie was a partnership in those early years, too. She helped with accounting and even packed orders, sharing the dream of building something big. Those early years weren't just about starting a company. They were about Jeff finding his purpose. Leaving Wall Street was a gamble, but it showed his willingness to bet on himself. The internet was new, and most people thought online shopping was a fad. Jeff saw it differently. He saw a future where people could buy anything, anytime, from anywhere. That vision, born in a garage in Seattle, would turn Amazon into a household name. But in those early days, it was just Jeff, Mackenzie, and a small team, working late nights, chasing a dream that seemed crazy to everyone else. By the late 1990s, Jeff Bezos had turned a risky idea hatched in a Seattle garage into a company that was changing how people shopped. Amazon, born from the curiosity and problem-solving spirit Jeff showed as a kid tinkering with screwdrivers and dreaming of space colonies, was no longer just an online bookstore. The boy who rigged an electric alarm to keep his siblings out of his room was now building a business that aimed to sell everything to everyone. The years from the late 1990s to the 2010s were a wild ride for Amazon, as Jeff pushed the company to grow faster, innovate constantly, and take on challenges that tested his vision. He faced competition, criticism, and even failure, but his focus on customers and long-term thinking, ideas rooted in his early days of learning from his grandfather on a Texas ranch, kept Amazon moving forward. This period saw Amazon become a global powerhouse, reshaping retail, technology, and even how we think about shopping. As Amazon entered 1998, it was selling more than books. Jeff saw the internet as a way to offer customers endless choices, something no physical store could match. He expanded Amazon's inventory to include CDs, DVDs, toys, and electronics, aiming to make the company a one-stop shop. This wasn't just about selling more stuff. It was about building trust with customers, a lesson Jeff carried from his high school days working the breakfast shift at McDonald's, where he learned to keep people happy under pressure. The website's customer reviews, which Jeff introduced early on, were a hit. People loved reading what others thought, even if it meant some books got bad ratings. Publishers grumbled, but Jeff stuck to his belief that honesty built loyalty. By 1999, Amazon had millions of customers, and Jeff was named Time Magazine's Person of the Year at age 35, a nod to his role in making e-commerce mainstream. But success came with growing pains. Amazon was burning through cash, spending heavily on warehouses and servers to keep up with demand. Investors worried the company might collapse, especially as dot-com startups crashed left and right in 2000. Jeff stayed calm, sticking to his day one philosophy from his 1997 shareholder letter, which he wrote with the same clarity he'd shown in his valedictorian speech at Miami Palmetto High School. He told investors to focus on long term, not quick profits, promising that Amazon would keep innovating to win customers. One of Jeff's biggest moves came in 2002 with the launch of Amazon Web Services, or AWS. Back at Princeton, Jeff had studied computer science, fascinated by how machines could solve problems. That curiosity drove him to see the internet as more than a store. It could be a platform for other businesses. Amazon had built powerful computer systems to handle its growing website, but those systems sat idle when traffic was low. Jeff and his team realized they could rent out that computing power to other companies, like renting out extra space in a warehouse. AWS started small, offering storage and processing power to startups and developers. It was a bold move, Amazon was a retailer, not a tech company, and competitors like Microsoft and IBM were giants in computing. But Jeff's willingness to take risks, a trait he'd shown when he quit his Wall Street job, paid off. By 2010, AWS was a game changer, powering websites for companies like Netflix and Airbnb. It wasn't just a side project. It became Amazon's biggest moneymaker, earning billions while the retail side often broke even. AWS showed Jeff's ability to think beyond the obvious, a skill he'd honed taking apart gadgets as a kid. Another big leap came in 2005 with Amazon Prime. Jeff wanted to make shopping even faster and easier, so he introduced a $79 a year membership that offered free 2-day shipping on millions of items. It was a gamble. Shipping costs were huge, and analysts thought it would bankrupt the company. Jeff saw it differently. He believed fast delivery would make customers shop more, and he was right. Prime members spent twice as much as regular customers, and by 2015, Prime had 40 million subscribers. The idea tied back to his high school days, when he learned at McDonald's that speed and convenience kept customers coming back. Prime wasn't just about shipping. It came with perks like streaming movies and music, turning Amazon into a lifestyle brand. Jeff's focus on customers, rooted in his early belief that solving problems for others was a key to success, made Prime a hit. In 2007, Jeff took Amazon into a new frontier with the Kindle, an e-reader that let people carry thousands of books in a slim device. As a kid, Jeff loved reading sci-fi novels like Star Trek books, and at Princeton, he'd briefly studied English, dreaming of stories that sparked imagination. The Kindle was his way of making books more accessible. It wasn't just a gadget. It was a whole system, letting users buy and download books instantly from Amazon's digital store. The first Kindle sold out in 5 hours, even though it cost $399 and looked clunky compared to today's models. Jeff didn't stop there. He pushed publishers to lower e-book prices, sometimes selling them at a loss to get customers hooked. Publishers fought back, worried about losing control, but Jeff's vision won out. By 2011, Amazon was selling more ebooks than physical books, changing how people read. The Kindle showed Jeff's ability to blend his love for technology and stories, a mix that started when he was a teen dreaming of space adventures. Amazon's growth wasn't all smooth sailing. As the company got bigger, so did the criticism. In 2011, reports surfaced about tough working conditions in Amazon's warehouses, where workers faced long hours and hot conditions for low pay. By 2015, a New York Times article painted Amazon's office culture as brutal, with employees working 80-hour weeks and facing intense pressure. Jeff, who'd learned resilience from his mom's struggles as a young single mother, didn't back down. He said the article didn't reflect the Amazon he knew, but he also made changes. In 2018, Amazon raised its minimum wage to $15 an hour, a move prompted in part by criticism from Senator Bernie Sanders, who introduced a Stop Bezos Act to tax companies with low-wage workers. Jeff took the criticism in stride, focusing on improving conditions while keeping Amazon's fast pace. His ability to adapt, a skill he learned fixing windmills on his grandfather's ranch, kept the company moving forward. Amazon's reach kept growing. In 2017, Jeff made a bold move by buying Whole Foods for $13.7 billion. It was a surprise. Amazon was an online company, and Whole Foods was a brick-and-mortar grocery chain. But Jeff saw a chance to combine online shopping with physical stores. Customers could order groceries online and pick them up at Whole Foods or get them delivered fast. The deal also gave Amazon data on how people shop for food, which Jeff used to make the company's recommendations even smarter. It was a page from his Princeton days, when he studied how computers could analyze patterns to solve problems. Whole Foods helped Amazon dominate another corner of retail, proving Jeff's knack for seeing opportunities others missed. Jeff's leadership during this period was intense and unique. He banned PowerPoint in meetings, a rule inspired by his love for clear thinking, which he'd shown in his high school valedictorian speech. Instead, he asked employees to write 6-page memos or narratives that forced them to explain ideas in detail. It was a tough standard, but Jeff believed it made his team think harder and communicate better. His annual shareholder letters, written with the same clarity, became famous for laying out Amazon's principles. focus on customers, take big risks, build a strong culture, boost staff morale, and empower employees to act like owners. These ideas echoed the lessons Jeff learned early on, his grandfather's advice to solve problems step by step, his stepdad's example of hard work, and his own drive to chase big dreams. By the late 2010s, Amazon was a giant, with a market value of over $1 trillion and millions of customers worldwide. Jeff's vision, born from a curiosity of a kid who took apart his crib with a screwdriver, had transformed shopping, reading, and technology. But success came with scrutiny. Lawmakers in the U.S. and Europe started investigating Amazon for antitrust issues, saying it used its size to crush smaller businesses. Jeff faced these challenges with the same determination he'd shown, leaving Wall Street to start Amazon. He testified before Congress in 2020, defending Amazon's practices, while admitting there was always room to improve. His ability to stay focused, a trait rooted in his early years of tackling tough tasks on the ranch, kept Amazon strong. This period wasn't just about business. It was about Jeff proving he could turn a big idea into a lasting legacy. Amazon's rise showed his ability to think long-term, take risks, and keep customers first, all ideas that trace back to his childhood. The company wasn't perfect, and neither was Jeff, but his drive to keep innovating, from AWS to Prime to the Kindle, showed the same spark he had as a kid dreaming of space colonies. As Amazon grew, Jeff's ambitions did too, leading him to new ventures like space exploration and philanthropy, which would define the next chapter of his life. Jeff Bezos' story didn't stop with Amazon's rise to a global giant. The same kid who dreamed of space colonies in his high school valedictorian speech, tinkered with gadgets in his childhood bedroom, and learned problem-solving on his grandfather's Texas ranch was ready to chase even bigger dreams. By the early 2000s, Jeff had built Amazon into a powerhouse, but his ambition stretched far beyond online shopping. He wanted to explore space, reshape journalism, and give back to the world. His ventures into Blue Origin, the Washington Post, and philanthropy showed the same bold thinking he displayed as a teen inspired by Star Trek, and as a young man quitting a cushy Wall Street job to start Amazon. These projects weren't just side hobbies. They were extensions of Jeff's belief that he could solve big problems and leave a lasting mark. From launching rockets to saving a struggling newspaper to tackling climate change, this chapter of his life was about taking risks, facing criticism, and proving that his vision could reach beyond Earth itself. Jeff's fascination with space, sparked by sci-fi books and his Princeton days and students for the exploration and development of Space Club, led him to found Blue Origin in 2000. He started the company quietly, using his own money to buy land in West Texas, not far from the ranch where he'd spent summers fixing windmills with his grandfather. Blue Origin's mission was simple but audacious: make space travel cheaper and more accessible so humans could live and work in space. Jeff saw Earth's resources as limited, a concern he'd voiced in his 1982 high school speech about turning the planet into a national park. He believed space colonies could save humanity, and Blue Origin was his way to make that happen. The company's early years were secretive, with Jeff pouring millions from his Amazon wealth into research and development. Unlike Amazon's fast-paced growth, Blue Origin moved slowly, focusing on building reusable rockets that could take off and land multiple times, cutting costs. Jeff's patience, a trait he'd learned from methodically solving problems as a kid, was key. He didn't expect quick wins. He was playing a long game, just like he did with Amazon's Day One mindset. By 2015, Blue Origin started making headlines. Its New Shepard rocket, named after astronaut Alan Shepard, became the first reusable rocket to reach space and land back on Earth. It was a big deal. NASA and other companies had tried and failed to do this. Jeff celebrated the milestone, tweeting a video of the landing and taking a jab at competitors like Elon Musk's SpaceX, which was also chasing reusable rockets. The rivalry was real. Musk and Jeff traded barbs online, each claiming their approach was better. Blue Origin's progress wasn't just about rockets. It was about Jeff's vision of making space a place for regular people, not just astronauts. In 2019, he unveiled the Blue Moon lander, designed to carry cargo and eventually humans to the lunar surface. He pitched it to NASA, hoping to play a role in the Artemis program to return humans to the moon. Critics said Blue Origin was moving too slowly compared to SpaceX, but Jeff stayed focused, using the same determination he'd shown when Amazon faced doubters in the dot-com crash. His biggest moment came on July 20th, 2021, when he flew on the New Shepard himself alongside his brother Mark, an 18-year-old student, and an 82-year-old aviation pioneer, Wally Funk. The 10-minute trip to the edge of space was a personal triumph, tying back to the dreams of a kid who named his dog after a Star Trek character. Jeff called it his best day ever, but it also showed the world that Blue Origin was serious about commercial spaceflight. While Blue Origin aimed for the stars, Jeff made a surprising move closer to home in 2013. He bought the Washington Post for $250 million. The newspaper, a legend in American journalism, was struggling. Print subscriptions were down, and digital ads weren't paying the bills. Jeff, who'd loved reading as a kid and studied English briefly at Princeton, saw a chance to save a cultural institution. He didn't just want to keep it alive. He wanted to make it thrive in the digital age, using the same customer-focused thinking he'd applied at Amazon. His approach was hands-off when it came to newsroom decisions, but he pushed for innovation. He hired tech experts to build a digital platform, making the Post website faster and easier to use. He also expanded its online reach, offering free access to some articles and creating apps that worked on Kindles and smartphones. By 2017, the Post was profitable again, with millions of digital subscribers. Jeff's data-driven mindset, honed during his computer science days at Princeton, helped the paper use analytics to understand what readers wanted, much like Amazon's recommendation system. The Washington Post wasn't without controversy. Some worried Jeff's ownership would influence the paper's reporting, especially on Amazon. In 2019, when the Post covered Amazon's labor practices, critics accused Jeff of meddling, though editors insisted he stayed out of the newsroom. Another firestorm came in 2024, when the Post chose not to endorse a presidential candidate, breaking a decades-long tradition. Some staff and readers were upset, but Jeff backed the decision, saying it was about staying neutral in a polarized world. The move echoed his ability to handle tough situations, a skill he'd learned from his mom's resilience as a young single mother. Despite the backlash, Jeff's ownership stabilized the Post, proving he could apply his problem-solving skills. First shown taking apart his crib as a toddler, to a completely different industry. Philanthropy became another big focus for Jeff, especially as his wealth grew to over $200 billion by the 2010s. The kid who'd work hard at McDonald's and learned the value of giving back from his parents' support for Amazon's early days now had the means to make a global impact. In 2018, he and his then-wife Mackenzie launched the Bezos Day One Fund, pledging $2 billion to help homeless families and build preschools for low-income kids. The fund's name came from Jeff's Amazon philosophy of always acting like it's the first day of a startup, hungry and ready to innovate. The preschools, called Montessori-inspired academies, open in places like Texas and Washington, offering free education to kids in need. Jeff's focus on early education tied back to his own childhood, when his mom and grandfather encouraged his curiosity with books and hands-on projects. In 2020, Jeff went bigger with the Bezos Earth Fund, committing $10 billion to fight climate change. The fund gave grants to scientists, activists, and organizations working on green energy and conservation. It was a massive pledge, one of the largest ever, and showed Jeff's belief that big problems needed big solutions, a mindset he'd had since dreaming of space colonies as a teen. Critics, though, pointed out the irony. Amazon's massive shipping network and data centers burn a lot of energy. Jeff didn't shy away from the criticism, admitting Amazon had work to do. By 2024, the company was investing in electric delivery vans and renewable energy, aiming to be carbon neutral by 2040. The Earth Fund wasn't just about money. It was Jeff applying the same long-term thinking he'd used to build Amazon, rooted in the patience he learned fixing pipes on the ranch. Jeff's wealth also let him dive into personal investments through Bezos Expeditions, a venture fund he started in 2005. He backed companies like Uber, Airbnb, and Twitter, showing his knack for spotting winners, a skill he'd honed at D. Shaw analyzing markets. He also bought real estate, from a $165 million mansion in Beverly Hills to a $500 million super yacht named Karoo, launched in 2023. The yacht, with its sleek design and eco-friendly features, was a symbol of Jeff's success, but also drew flack for its extravagance. Some saw it as out of touch, especially as Amazon faced scrutiny over worker wages. Jeff, who'd learned to tune out doubters when he left Wall Street, kept his focus on his goals, using his wealth to fuel his passions for space, media, and social good. These ventures weren't without setbacks. Blue Origin lost a NASA contract to SpaceX in 2021, leading Jeff to sue, arguing the process was unfair. The lawsuit failed, and some called it a sore loser move, but Jeff saw it as standing up for his vision, much like he'd stood firm when Amazon was losing money in the early 2000s. The Washington Post faced staff turnover and reader pushback over its 2024 non-endorsement, testing Jeff's leadership. His philanthropy, while massive, was criticized by some who felt it didn't go far enough compared to his wealth. Yet Jeff kept moving forward, driven by the same curiosity that had him dismantling gadgets as a kid and the ambition that pushed him to build Amazon from a garage. Blue Origin, the Washington Post, and philanthropy showed Jeff at his boldest, taking on challenges most wouldn't touch. They tied back to the boy who dreamed of space, loved stories, and learned to solve problems step by step. These projects weren't just about money. They were about leaving a legacy. By the mid-2020s, Jeff had stepped back from Amazon's day-to-day operations, handing the CEO role to Andy Jassy in 2021. But he wasn't slowing down. His focus on space journalism and giving back was just to start a new chapter, one that would build on the dreams he'd had since his days in Miami, staring at the stars and imagining a bigger future. Jeff Bezos' life is a story of turning big dreams into reality, from a kid tinkering with screwdrivers in his bedroom to a billionaire reshaping the world. The same curiosity that drove him to take apart his crib as a toddler, the ambition that fueled his high school speech about colonizing space, and the problem-solving skills he honed on his grandfather's Texas ranch carried him through Amazon's rise, Blue Origin's rocket launches, and bold ventures like the Washington Post. By the mid-2020s, Jeff had stepped back from running Amazon day-to-day, but his personal life, immense wealth, and plans for the future kept him in the spotlight. This chapter of his story is about more than business. It's about family, love, controversy, and a legacy that balances world-changing innovation with intense public scrutiny. It's the tale of a man who learned early to chase what mattered to him, no matter the odds, and who now faced the challenge of defining what comes next. Jeff's personal life took center stage as his wealth and fame grew. In 1993, he married Mackenzie Scott, a Princeton graduate and aspiring writer he met while working at D. Shaw in New York. Their partnership was more than a marriage. It was a team effort in Amazon's early days. Mackenzie, who shared Jeff's love for big ideas, helped pack books in their Seattle garage and handled accounting for the fledgling company. They had 4 children, 3 sons and a daughter adopted from China, and built a family life in Seattle, where Jeff tried to keep things normal despite his growing fortune. He'd drive the kids to school in a Honda minivan, a nod to the practical lessons he learned from his stepdad, Mike Bezos, who worked hard to provide for the family. Jeff and Mackenzie were married for 25 years, a partnership that seemed unshakable. But in January 2019, they announced their divorce, shocking the world. The split was amicable, with Jeff praising Mackenzie's intelligence and heart in a joint statement. The settlement was massive. Mackenzie received a 4% stake in Amazon, worth about $38 billion at the time, making her one of the richest women in the world. She kept a low profile, focusing on philanthropy through her giving pledge commitment, donating billions to causes like education and racial equity. Jeff's ability to navigate the divorce with respect echoed the resilience he'd seen in his mom, Jacqueline, who raised him as a teenage single mother. After the divorce, Jeff's personal life took a more public turn. In 2019, he began dating Lauren Sanchez, a former TV anchor and helicopter pilot with a vibrant personality. Their relationship drew headlines, especially after the National Enquirer published private texts between them, alleging an affair before Jeff's divorce. The tabloid drama was messy. Jeff accused the Enquirer's parent company of blackmail, claiming they threatened to release compromising photos unless he stopped investigating how they got the texts. He fought back in a blog post, refusing to bow to pressure and earning praise for standing his ground. The episode showed the same grit he displayed as a kid rigging an alarm to keep his siblings out. Only now he was battling media giants. Jeff and Lauren's relationship grew stronger, and in May 2023, they got engaged. In August 2025, they married in a high-profile wedding in Venice, Italy, attended by close friends and family. The event, held on Jeff's $500 million super yacht Karoo, was a mix of glamour and controversy. Some called it extravagant, given Amazon's labor criticisms, but Jeff and Lauren seemed unfazed, focusing on their new chapter. Jeff worked to shield his children from the spotlight, keeping their names private, a choice rooted in his own childhood desire for a normal life despite his parents' early struggles. Jeff's wealth, estimated at $220.9 billion by Forbes in May 2025, made him the third richest person alive, behind Elon Musk and Bernard Arnault. That fortune, built from Amazon's success, gave him power and scrutiny. He owned sprawling homes, from a $165 million Beverly Hills estate once owned by Jack Warner to a private Hawaiian compound. His super yacht Karoo, with its 230-foot support vessel and eco-friendly design, became a symbol of his wealth, but also a lightning rod for critics who saw it as out of touch. Jeff didn't shy away from spending. He bought art, like a $70 million Basquiat painting, and invested in ventures like Altos Labs, a biotech startup aiming to extend human life. These choices tied back to his Princeton days, when he studied computer science and dreamed of solving big problems, from space travel to aging. But his wealth also brought questions about responsibility. In 2021, he pledged to give away most of his fortune, inspired by philanthropists like Warren Buffett. Through the Bezos Earth Fund, he committed $10 billion to fight climate change, funding projects like electric vehicles and reforestation. The Day One Fund, launched with McKinsey in 2018, gave $2 billion to support homeless families in preschools, reflecting the value Jeff placed on education, a lesson from his mom's push to finish high school while raising him. Critics, though, argued his giving didn't match his wealth. $12 billion in pledges was a fraction of his fortune, and Amazon's environmental impact, from shipping emissions to data center energy use, remained a sore point. Jeff responded by pushing Amazon toward sustainability, aiming for net zero carbon by 2040, a goal that showed his long-term thinking, just like his Day One philosophy from Amazon's early days. Jeff's legacy is a mix of awe and debate. Amazon changed how we shop, with Prime's 2-day delivery, the Kindle's digital books, and AWS powering much of the internet. Blue Origin's reusable rockets opened the door to commercial space travel, fulfilling the dreams of the teen who spoke about space colonies in 1982. The Washington Post revival under his ownership showed he could adapt his problem-solving skills, learn fixing windmills on a ranch, to new fields. But his legacy isn't all praise. Critics point to Amazon's labor practices. Warehouse workers face long hours and high injury rates, as reported in 2021 investigations. Antitrust probes in the U.S. and Europe accuse Amazon of using its dominance to crush smaller businesses, leading to Jeff's 2020 congressional testimony, where he defended the company while admitting flaws. Some saw him as a ruthless capitalist, others as a visionary who made life easier for millions. His response to criticism echoed his childhood resilience. When faced with tough tasks like vaccinating cattle or coding Amazon's first website, he focused on solutions, not complaints. Looking to the future, Jeff shows no signs of slowing down. After stepping down as Amazon CEO in July 2021, he became executive chairman, staying involved in big decisions while handing daily operations to Andy Jassy. The move gave him time to focus on Blue Origin, which he sees as his most important work. By 2025, Blue Origin was testing larger rockets like New Glenn, aiming to compete with SpaceX for NASA contracts and commercial launches. Jeff's 2021 spaceflight on the New Shepard was just a start. He envisions millions living in space, a dream rooted in his Star Trek-inspired youth. He's also exploring new frontiers through investments like Altos Labs, which researches anti-aging, showing his curiosity hasn't faded since his days taking apart gadgets. Philanthropy remains a priority. with the Earth Fund and Day One Fund expanding their reach. Though Jeff faces pressure to give more as his wealth grows, he's hinted at new projects, teasing in interviews that he's working on ideas nobody's thought of yet, a nod to the inventive spirit that drove him to build Amazon from a garage. Jeff's public persona is complex. To some, he's a hero who made shopping easier, books digital, and space closer. To others, he's a symbol of inequality, with a fortune that could solve world problems but fuels super yachts and mansions. He's navigated this divide with the same focus he showed as a kid, ignoring doubters to chase his goals. The National Enquirer scandal tested his resolve, but he came out stronger, much like when he bet everything on Amazon in 1994. His marriage to Lauren Sanchez, celebrated in Venice in 2025, shows a softer side, but he remains private about his kids, wanting them to have a normal childhood he valued in Miami. His legacy, like his life, is about taking risks, whether leaving Wall Street, flying to space, or buying a struggling newspaper. Each move ties back to boy who dreamed big, worked hard, and never stopped asking, what if? As Jeff looks to the future, his story is still being written, with space, science, and giving back at its core. The kid who once imagined Earth as a national park is now a man trying to make that vision real, one bold step at a time.